Let's take a look back at our social studies unit. We started by talking about the Native American culture groups and how people migrated to North America. Then we moved to explorers and how people from other countries came to North America. Now we are digging into the first 5 colonies that were established in North America. The 5 beginning colonies are Jamestown, Plymouth, St. Augustine, Roanoke Island, and Massachusetts Bay Company. I'm going to give you a little summary of each of the colonies. The first colony was the Roanoke Island Colony, also known as the Lost Colony. This colony was my favorite to read about because it's very mysterious. 2 ships sailed from England on April 27, 1584, and landed on the coast of North Carolina on July 13, 1584. This landing marked the first time the English flag waved in the New World. However, did the colony make it? You have to read to find out. The St. Augustine colony was established by the Spanish in 1565 in what is now Florida. St. Augustine is the oldest continuously occupied settlement of European origin in the United States. Jamestown Colony was established in 1607 in what is now Virginia. It was the first English settlement. We're actually going to read about this colony together during this PowerPoint. The Plymouth Colony was the second permanent English settlement. It was established in 1620, and the colony was located on the rocky western shore of Cape Cod Bay in southeastern Massachusetts. You're going to read about the Plymouth Colony in the team's meeting after this video with your teacher. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was established in 1630 in what is now Massachusetts. This colony was very interesting to read about because it was made up of mostly Puritans who tried to govern themselves and break away from governors and stockholders in England. So you'll have to read to find out how that went when they tried to break away from England. Together in this video, we are going to read about Jamestown Colony and complete the notes on this colony. However, you are going to end up, after this video and after your team's meeting with your teacher, you are going to become an expert on one colony. You are going to read about one colony and complete this note-taking sheet on that colony. You will become an expert on the colony and actually share out in social studies on Wednesday. Let's go ahead and start with Jamestown Colony. As we're reading about Jamestown Colony, we need to be thinking about what was the date when it was founded, the colonizing country, why was it established, reasons for success, and difficulties. Jamestown Colony. In June of 1606, King James I granted a charter to a group of London entrepreneurs, the Virginia Company, to establish an English settlement in the Chesapeake region of North America. In December of that year, 104 settlers sailed from London with company instructions to build a secure settlement, find gold, and seek a water route to the Pacific. The traditional telling of early Jamestown history portrayed those pioneers as ill-suited for the task. But 20 years of archaeological research at the site of James Fort suggests that Captain Bartholomew Goldsnold and many of the artisans, craftsmen, and laborers who accompanied the gentleman leaders made every effort to build a successful colony. So it doesn't say the date founded yet. It just says when King James granted the charter to establish this settlement. However, we do know that the colonizing country is England because it's an English settlement, right? Why was it established? Here it says that the purpose, the company instructions, were to build a secure settlement, find gold, and seek a water route to the Pacific. So that's really why they wanted to establish this settlement. Now, reasons for success, we don't know yet, and we're not sure of any difficulties yet. But so far, those are 2 things we can add to our notes. On May 14, 1607, the Virginia Company settlers landed on Jamestown Island to establish an English colony 60 miles from the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. Discovery of the exact location of the first fort indicates its site was in a secure place where Spanish ships could not fire point blank into the fort. Within days of landing, the colonists were attacked by Powhatan Indians. The newcomers spent the next few weeks working to bear and plant palisados, a wooden fort. 3 contemporary accounts and a sketch of the fort agree that its walls formed a triangle around a storehouse, church, and a number of houses. Bulwarks, raised platforms for cannons were built at the 3 corners to defend against a possible Spanish attack. After reading this, we see Jamestown Colony was founded on May 14, 1607. So that's something that we'll add into our note-taking organizer. We also found a difficulty when we read this paragraph that within days of landing, the colonists were attacked by Powhatan Indians. So that's a difficulty there. We'll add both of those to our note-taking sheet. The Virginia Company tried to intensify the focus on money-making industry with the first supply to Jamestown, but disease, famine, and sporadic attacks from the neighboring Powhatan Indians took a tremendous toll on the population of the settlement. There were also times when trade with the Powhatan revived the colony with food in exchange for glass beads, copper, and iron implements. Captain John Smith was particularly good at this trade, but his strict leadership made enemies within and without the fort, and a mysterious gunpowder explosion badly injured him and sent him back to England in October 1609. So I can see a difficulty here as well, that there was disease, famine, and sporadic attacks from the Indians, which that wasn't good on the colony. So that's something that we need to add to our difficulties, because that took a tremendous toll on the population of the settlement. However, there's also a reason for success. At times, Jamestown Colony had success because there were times when they could trade with the Powhatan Indians. So when trade with the Powhatan revived the colony with food in exchange for glass beads, copper, and iron implements. So when the Indians and the colonists were getting along, things were good. We'll add that to our note-taking sheet. What followed was Jamestown's darkest hour, the starving time, winter of 1609 to 1610. About 300 settlers crowded into James Fort when the Indians set up a siege, and only 60 settlers survived to the next spring. The survivors decided to bury the fort's ordnance and abandon the town. It was only the arrival of the new governor, Lord de la Ware, and his supply ships that brought the colonists back to the fort and set the colony back on its feet. Some years of peace and prosperity followed the 1614 wedding of Pocahontas, the favored daughter of Chief Powhatan, to tobacco grower John Rolfe. So let's look at this here. So the starving time during the winter of 1609 to 1610 was definitely a difficulty for these settlers. So we can see here that due to the siege, not many survived. So that's something that was very difficult for the colony. So about 300 settlers crowded into James Fort when the Indians set up a siege, and only 60 survived to the next spring. So that's something we're going to add, because then also the survivors decided to bury the fort's ordnance and abandon the town. So that's a difficulty for the colony. However, there was help. Here it says it was only the arrival of the new governor, Lord de la Ware, and his supply ships that brought the colonists back to the fort and set the colony back on its feet. So that was something that was of some success to help them back on its feet. And then also there were years of peace and prosperity that followed the wedding of Pocahontas and the favored daughter, who was the favored daughter of Powhatan, and she married one of the tobacco growers that was a colonist. So that helped to bring some peace and was a reason for success. Let's add that to our note-taking sheet. You can see here that our note-taking sheet is starting to get pretty full. So we see that there are 3 reasons for success, 3 difficulties. Let's continue to read to see what happens to Jamestown Colony. The first representative assembly in English North America convened in the Jamestown Church on July 30th, 1619. The General Assembly met in response to orders from the Virginia Company to establish one equal and uniform government over all Virginia and provide just laws for the happy guiding and governing of the people they're inhabiting. A few weeks later came the first arrival of Africans to Jamestown, marking the beginning of de facto slavery in the colony. Nothing really to add here yet. Let's keep reading. After Chief Powhatan's death, his brother took leadership of the Indians of Eastern Virginia and in 1622 ordered a surprise attack on the English tobacco farms and settlements. More than 300 settlers were killed. A last-minute warning spared James Fort itself, but the attack on the colony and the continuing mismanagement by the Virginia Company convinced the king to revoke the company's charter. Virginia became a crown colony in 1624. So here are some more difficulties for Jamestown. So here there was that attack by Chief Powhatan's brother on the settlers, which was not good. So here we have that surprise attack on the farms and settlements, and more than 300 settlers were killed. And even though the fort itself was spared, due to the mismanagement of the colony, the king revoked that colony because the Virginia Company was the one sponsoring the colony. So the attack and the mismanagement convinced the king to revoke the company's charter. So it later became a crown colony in 1624, 2 years after the colony was revoked from the Virginia Company. We'll add that to our difficulties on our note-taking sheet. So here's our note-taking sheet that is completed after reading about the Jamestown colony. We have found every piece for every part of the note-taking sheet. So now it's about to be your turn. Let's see what your job is. Today, your job is to pull up the early colony note-taking sheet in Canvas, find your group, go with your group, and work together to complete your note-taking sheet on your colony. Together with your group, you will look up information about your assigned colony. You'll become an expert on that colony. Be prepared to share out your notes to your classmates on Wednesday in social studies.